we have to allow the engine of free enterprise to do its work. And that means there's going to be a lot of different competing business models and a lot of competing brands. My suggestion to people who come from an activist background is that you develop brands and you develop business models that reflect those values. And I think that there will be many people in the consumer marketplace for cannabis who are going to be attracted to that kind of authenticity. And there will also be plenty of other new consumers who are coming in who are attracted to other kinds of brands. I think there's going to be plenty of room for both of them.
One of the things that activists who do want to go into business find that they like about these newly arriving capitalists is that they bring with them this infusion of money. So maybe they need, startup capital, or they need growth capital, or something like that. One of the unique things about how you started Harborside, though, is that you started Harborside with very little original investment, and then you did not need to take any growth capital. What kind of suggestions would you give to someone in a state that is moving towards normalization to help them build their business without either A, having to take large cash infusions and giving up a lot of equity in their company, or feeling like they have to give up because they just don't have enough money?
My suggestion is that they focus on talent. I think that talent is a lot more important than money. I've seen cannabis companies who have received, pretty significant infusions of cash and not done a whole lot of great things with that cash because they lacked the talent to be able to properly execute on it. I think that the very first and most important thing is talent. When I look at the new folks who come from a more traditional business background who are coming into the industry, the thing that excites me isn't the money that they're bringing with them. It's that they know how to do all of these things that I don't know how to do. I've been focusing on cannabis for 30 or 40 years. I haven't been focusing on investor relations or fundraising strategies or systems. So having these folks coming in, I think, is hugely helpful. And the new talent that's coming into the industry needs to be educated. So, and the smartest new talent that's coming in is acutely aware of that. So my best advice to the legacy cannabis businesses is that you identify some really talented, highly talented people from traditional business backgrounds, and that you form an alliance where there's an interchange of information and teaching, where they can teach you more about modern business techniques and strategies and tools and resources, and you can teach them about cannabis.
A lot of these new cannabis companies, because they're being started on a bootstrap, and sometimes they're being started by folks who don't have much business background, they don't really have an HR department yet. And so you've got whoever the principal is going ahead and doing the initial hiring themselves, which they may not be, all too comfortable with. There's a lot of folks who are applying for jobs who are just excited about getting into cannabis, but they may not actually have the skill set to back that up. And sometimes they have the skill set, but maybe their fantasy of what it's going to look like to be in cannabis is more than their work ethic. You've obviously hired a lot of people. What would you say as an advice to someone who is hiring for their own cannabis business to kind of wade through the deluge of talent that's offered to you to find the particular people that are going to be best for their companies?
Hire an HR professional to help you with that. This is not something that you should take on yourself. Most people who come from a legacy cannabis background of necessity have had to remain rather small in order to survive. And we have not had a great deal of experience in hiring large numbers of people. And each hire is critically important, especially to a small company and a new company. One bad hire can really set you back. And what I found is most effective in hiring is to look at a lot of different candidates, to review them, to rigorously check out their references, and then to have a interview process which includes actually assigning them tasks and seeing how each one of the candidates performs with those tasks. And what I'm describing is a time-consuming process. and it's really best conducted with the help of a qualified HR professional. I'd say that the cost that was expended there would be well worth the return.
Yeah, that's some great advice. We're going to take another short break and be right back. You are listening to the Ganjapreneur.com podcast.
After a short message from the sponsors who made this show possible, Ganjapreneur will return.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled Kaercher. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plants, and your pursuits. Kaercher spells out their full-service insurance services ranging from commercial to bonds, to personal, from life to health, and more. Contact the team at KarcherInsurance.com and let our experience work for you. That's Kaercher Insurance.com.
Contact Karen and the team at Karcher Insurance at 1-844-421-3560. That's 844-421-3560.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
Cannabis Confidential with Dr. Dina. Candid.
I want to give you the inside story.
Captivating.
I want to introduce you to my kind and amazingly talented friends.
Compelling.
We get to meet some of the most amazing cannabis activists and warriors around.
Listen in as medical marijuana pioneer Dr. Dina shares never-before-heard stories, chats with cannabis insiders and celebrity friends, and provides invaluable perspective and insight into one of the fastest-growing industries in the world.
I want to share with you what was once confidential information. Let's expose the truth, discuss the issues, and learn the facts.
Cannabis Confidential, only on CannabisRadio.com.
We're back to help Ganjapreneurs grow. You're listening to Ganjapreneur, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Ganjapreneur.com podcast. I'm your host, Shango Lost, and our guest this week is cannabis entrepreneur, activist, and author Steve D'Angelo. So before the break, we were talking about the best ways to implement policies in a new cannabis business wherever you live in the country. But Steve, specifically, you live in California, and there have been some huge changes in your local California cannabis regulations recently. How are they affecting your business, and how do you see they're going to evolve over the next few months?
So the California legislature finally, 20 years after the voters instructed them to do it in Proposition 215, has passed regulations for medical cannabis. So we will have finally state-level licensing for cannabis businesses, medical cannabis businesses in California. That's the good news. The bad news is that those regulations, in essence, make success in the medical cannabis industry in California illegal. As they're currently written, you cannot operate more than 3 dispensaries if you have any type of vertical integration. And there's a mandatory level for distributors. A lot of issues in this legislation. So we're hoping that the legislature takes a second look at it and puts some fixes in next session.
We speak with a lot of folks from Humboldt County and other folks that would consider themselves artisan growers versus big, more, I guess I'd call commercial warehouse growers. How do you see these new group of regulations affecting, smaller mom and pop growers? Do you think that there'll be a way to integrate them effectively into the overall?
The new regulations require that all cannabis cultivators sell their product only to a distributor and not to anybody else. They make it impossible for small growers to do a farm-to-table operation, for there to be farmers markets, for there to be bud and breakfast, for there to be a weed ranch type of model. So I think that it's a real step backwards for our small growers.
I I think that's a good point too, at the impact that the legislative actions have on individual businesses. We're not really in an industry where you can simply run your business and ignore what's going on in the legislature, because the regulations are changing so quickly. In your experience, what's a good approach for an entrepreneur who is looking at their business and how to make it better, and they kind of want to keep their head down, but at the same time they need to remain aware and participate in the legislature? Do you have any advice for entrepreneurs who are trying to live both?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's always a problem for businesses to become politically active when it's one individual business. Problem one, political work costs a lot of money and no individual business can really fund it. Problem two, you're putting yourself out there, and whenever you articulate a political position, there will be people who are opposed, and then your business specifically becomes a target for them. So the solution to both of those problems is to support organizations like the National Cannabis Industries Association or one of their state affiliates who can really represent the common interests of the industry at large in these legislative processes.
In your new book, The Cannabis Manifesto, that comes out today, you really talk a lot about the opening up the doors for common everyday people who don't really have much of a history with cannabis to feel comfortable with it. And to a certain degree, there's a certain amount of activism that creates for a normal person, because first they have to go out and find out about cannabis and learn about what it can do for them. And then if they live in a state that cannabis has not been normalized yet in, they're going to have to take some action with the legislature to make that medicine available in their state. What do you recommend for the normal person, the everyday American citizen, actions that they can take to help normalization along where they live?
Well, the most powerful thing that you can do is pay a person-to-person visit to all of your elected representatives. That includes your city council, your county board of supervisors, your congressperson, and your senator if you can get an appointment. One constituent meeting with an elected official has more impact than almost anything that you can do. So I strongly encourage people who have not met their elected representatives to do that. It's very easy. You just call up their office, say that you're a constituent and you'd like to meet with the representative, and almost always a meeting will be set up for you. The second thing that you can do to back that up is write some campaign donations to those candidates. That will give you the ability to call them up between elections and ask how things are going on your issue. So just that basic level of engagement, register to vote, know who your elected representatives are, write a few campaign donations to them, and make sure that they understand how you care about this issue. If every American who is in favor of cannabis reform did that, we would have the laws changed tomorrow.
Well, Steve, thanks so much for being on the show, especially today with how busy you are with your book launch. It's been a real honor to have you on the show.
It's been an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Steve D'Angelo is Executive Director of Harborside Health Center in San Francisco and co-founder of both Steep Hill Cannabis Analytics and the ArcView Cannabis Investment Group. His new book, The Cannabis Manifesto, is required reading for all cannabis enthusiasts and all humans who want to feel well. You can find more episodes of the Ganjapreneur podcast in the podcast section at ganjapreneur.com. You can also find us on the Cannabis Radio Network website and in the Apple iTunes store. On the ganjapreneur.com website, you will find the latest cannabis news, product reviews, and cannabis jobs updated daily, along with transcriptions of this podcast. You can also download the ganjapreneur.com app in iTunes and Google Play. We're also thrilled to announce this week that you can now find our show on the iHeartRadio Network app, bringing Ganjapreneur to 60 million mobile devices. Thanks to Brasco for producing our show. I am your host, Shango Los.
The opinions expressed on this CannabisRadio.com program are those of the guests and hosts and do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of CannabisRadio.com. Any rebroadcast or redistribution without proper consent of CannabisRadio.com is prohibited. seed to sale, clicks to conversions, and more. You're listening to the Cannabis Radio Network.